2 weeks?
Yeah, the 11th.
Sign me up. Sounds like a lot of fun. But today's topic isn't so much about fun. So when Hari Bhakta asked you to speak, it's about overcoming obstacles and seeing the beauty in life. And it's something that resonates deeply with me and something that I've been actually thinking about a lot lately. And, you know, when you come across these lows in life, it really paves a way to allow you to have so many different realizations. And, you know, I'm going to talk about why obstacles are vehicles for growth. And when we come across obstacles, we don't have to see it as a negative thing. We can really see it as an opportunity for us to upgrade and to get better. And, you know, let's just start off by doing a thought experiment. You know, so when you come across obstacles, you know, before that even happens, you start to think oh, I'm doing so great, right? I'm like the best, have all these things going on, I'm so strong, look at me, I'm all that in a bag of chips. How many of you guys have ever thought that? Been in a space where I'm doing so great? Never? Come on, let's be honest, right? And then what happens afterwards? Things change, things start to go south, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a second. Maybe I'm not all that. Maybe I'm not doing everything right. So then it kind of leaves room for you to remind yourself that you're not in control of everything. And I think that in itself is quite powerful. Because when you come across these obstacles, I mean, it puts you in a space where you can start to be introspective. And you can start to slow down and think through things deeply. You know, how many of us could say now that we think through life in a deep way, every single day? Every single day. That's great if you do. And, you know, the goal is for us to live in that space, time and time and again, minute to minute, moment to moment. But sometimes we find ourselves on the surface level just kind of getting by. And so these obstacles we come across these obstacles, and it leaves us room to be introspective. It reminds us that we're not in control. It's not all about us. You know, it's the world doesn't revolve around you. Sorry to say. That's the news that I have today. And another thing that allows you to start thinking about is, you know, what am I a part of? You know, if the world doesn't revolve around me, there must be something bigger going on here. And then you start to ask some of the bigger questions in life. And when you get to that space, it leaves room for you to be a little more humble. You know, it's one of my teachers says that humility isn't about thinking yourself as less than, but it's about thinking of yourself less. So let me say that again. So being humble doesn't mean that you think of yourself as less, but you just think of yourself less often. And, you know, these obstacles, we come across them, and then we start to have these realizations, and it can be really powerful in our lives. And, you know, I'm going to start off by asking you guys, when you guys come across obstacles currently, what is it that you guys do to cope with it? What's your go-to when you have a hard time? Who wants to open up and share?
I just go out in nature, in the forest. That's the cure for me. Yeah.
And what do you think it is about being in nature that allows you to heal or feel better?
Honestly, I think it's just all the creatures out there, and just being away from people. Honestly, just disconnecting from everyone and everything, basically.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that. Does anyone else want to share what they do when they come across obstacles? Yes.
Call out for help.
Call out for help. And
Yeah.
who do you normally call out to?
Krishna.
Of course. Beautiful. That's very lovely.
Yeah.
And we'll get into a little bit more of that later. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else have things that they do when they go through obstacles? Yeah.
I listen to kirtan
Uh-huh.
and just sing my heart out, because I feel that it opens the heart and it brings me to a space of a higher place
Yeah.
where I'm just okay, it's okay, right?
Right. That's
Connected to
amazing.
center.
And how long have you been doing that for? That's amazing. And, you know, like I'm asking because some of us might be new to this practice and like maybe we did things differently before to cope with obstacles. You know, now we're like here and we're experiencing a new way of viewing the world, right? And that's basically what it is when you, in order for you to see the beauty in life while you're going through a difficult time, it's just like a shift in perspective, right? Because it's so easy to, in the beginning, be like, this sucks. Like, I hate this. Why is this happening to me? Like, I'm such a good person, and I just, like, try to do everything good, and, like, why is this happening to me? Have you guys ever thought like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still think like that, like, catch myself, like, this sucks, like, why am I so sad? Like, what's going on? Like, what am I supposed to learn here? And if I just take a moment to pause, and I'm like, there's usually this deeper underlying realization that's, like, meant for me, that if I just like look deeply enough and shift my perspective, I can start to make space for it. So thank you guys for sharing like what you guys do to overcome obstacles. Does anyone else want to share something that they do? Yeah.
So usually I really like search why do I feel that way, and I'll talk to friends or like people who I see as guides that I look up to, or even like read from people that I look up to really understand like why and how and how do I get myself out of it. I really like to go into it and decipher it.
Yeah, and I really like what you said because it's like an acknowledgement that maybe in that moment you're not in a space where you could actually see the reality of what's going on. So you reach out to other people. Basically what you're doing is trying to gain a shift in perspective. So either by someone that can be an outsider looking in that can see things differently, or maybe you reach out and you reference a book that is filled with knowledge that you can draw inspiration from. But the end result's like you're trying to gain a shift in perspective, right? Because you can't necessarily change the circumstances most of the time, but you can change your mentality and how you view the obstacles that you're coming across. And so when I start to look for examples in my life, and you mentioned you go to people, but like what kind of people should we go to? I start to think about, okay, like what are examples of people that I know that can do this with grace? You know, that like you see them go through obstacles and you see them like remain like steady through it all, through the happiness and the distress. And then I start to think, like, what is it about them? Like, what is it that they have? And when you start to dig in and you look at these people that have that deep sense of inner fulfillment and deep sense of happiness, so much so that when they come across happiness and distress, they remain steady. You know, what I have found is that they have a deep connection. They have a deep connection to the Supreme. And as I think it through, I'm like, wow, that makes sense. You know, all these things that I'm attaching myself to are temporary and they're material things. So I'm like bound to suffer because I'm like attaching myself to something that's going to end at any moment and I have no control over it. And then I'm like, well, what is it that I could gain control over? Like, what's actually eternal? When you like, right? We start to ask these big questions. And I'm like, well, okay, my body, am I gonna like live forever? No, right? Like something's gonna happen eventually. But my soul is eternal. You know, and what is it that my soul's looking for? Like what is it that my soul needs? And it's this connection to the Supreme. That's like so natural. It's actually so natural for us. And so you start to look at these people that have the deep-rooted happiness that are so steady. And they have that deeply rooted connection. And, you know, then we start to think, well, how is it that I can do that? You know, and we surround ourselves by people that are seeking the same thing. And so just being here in this room alone is us attempting to do that. We're associating with each other, and some of you guys mentioned you cry out and you just like let your heart just scream out like, hey, I want a connection, like I want to like feel close to you. And the soul like feels that, and you feel like this deep steadiness from doing that. 'Cause that's like actually more natural to us than anything else. More natural than us working so hard to pursue all these material things. We're like killing ourselves over it, right? We're like working so hard, trying to make a name, trying to like gain a little bit of fame, a little bit of power, and then you get it, and then it disappears, or maybe you don't get it and it sucks and you're suffering. And we don't have to live like that. We don't have to operate on that platform. We can start to upgrade ourselves, but a lot of times unfortunately, we don't really upgrade until things are hard and we're realizing like, oh, that's not really the path I want to take. Let me let this obstacle show me the way. And obstacles could be really powerful from that perspective. And so I wanted to share with you guys the Gita. How many of you guys are familiar with the Gita? A lot of you. Quite a few of you guys. So earlier you mentioned that you reach out to people for support when you're in difficult times, or maybe you reach out to a book that's filled with knowledge and inspiration. And so Gandhi, who's like a symbol of peace, right? He wrote this about the Gita, and he said, "When doubts haunt me, when disappointments stare me in the face, and I see not one ray of hope on the horizon, I turn to the Bhagavad Gita and find a verse to comfort me, and I immediately begin to smile in the midst of overwhelming sorrow. Those who meditate on the Gita will derive fresh joy and new meaning from it every day." And growing up, I really looked up to Gandhi. I'm like, wow, like he did some amazing things. And so when I remember hearing that, I'm like, well, from the Gita, like I want to know more about this book and like what kind of knowledge it has to offer. And so in the Gita it says, "A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, is already situated in transcendence." So again, it's like referencing that person that is undisturbed through the pleasant things and the unpleasant things. So they remain steady, and it says that they're using their intelligence to guide them. And then on the next page it says, "Such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme." And what really stood out to me here was this focus on pleasure within. So again, going back to like, well, am I going to attach my happiness to all these material things? And in a lot of ways, our happiness is pretty cheap. And, I see a kid crying when they take the lollipop away, and I'm like, that's me. I'm like freaking out because someone like took the lollipop. It's like the adult version of that. And it's like, wow, like my happiness is so cheap. And if my happiness is that cheap, then it's going to be so easy for me to become disturbed and have a difficult time. But you could just imagine that if your happiness is drawn to something that's much greater than yourself, if you can start to ask the bigger questions like, why am I here? What is actually my purpose? Studies show that the happiest people in this world have found the answer to that question. They've asked themselves like what their purpose in life is, and they've been able to answer it. And so it makes sense to me. They're not so disturbed by like the waves and all the distractions that will inevitably come in their life, because they're focused on that higher purpose. It's like when you're taking care of your kid and things happen, you're like, no matter what, you're gonna take care of your child. There's like a deep sense of obligation and care, and like that's so fulfilling. And so we can start to do that in our own lives, and it's totally attainable. And then again, thinking through people that have inspired, thousands of people across time, people that inspired me, that I know have inspired a lot of people in this room, I can't help but to think of Srila Prabhupada. And for those of you guys that aren't familiar with who that is, he's an incredible person that was gifted the knowledge of how to become closer, how to become fulfilled within, how to connect to the Supreme. And he was so grateful for that knowledge, so grateful. And he took it upon himself to share that knowledge with other people. And he overcame so many difficulties, so many obstacles. He begged on a cargo ship just to come to the West, and he suffered from heart attacks. And it was just like, he had such a hard time. But while he was on that cargo ship, and it wasn't like a one-day flight, like for us, I just went to India actually a few weeks ago, and it's such a long flight, and I like complain, I'm like, oh my God, this sucks. But what he went through was so much more difficult. So it's like a one day of travel with food, a nice restroom, air conditioning, and Prabhupada didn't have any of that. And he had a heart attack on top of it. There wasn't a doctor around. And when he was going through that difficulty, he wrote a poem just like reaching out to the divine and saying, hey, I'm having a difficult time, but I'm here to serve you. I'm here to help others. That's like what I want to do. I want to help others. That's my purpose in life. And so then he comes over, lands in Boston, and like makes his way to New York, and like literally has nothing. Like still so much difficulty, so many obstacles. But it was fine because he was so deeply rooted. He had such a strong foundation, and it's important to build this foundation because then it's not easy for you to crumble and fall apart. Sometimes it's like just little things happen, like you get a parking ticket and you get all spun out and so upset. Right? Like these little things like deeply disturb you. But it's like those things actually aren't so important. So if you connect to your higher purpose and you make that your life goal, then those things are just like, oh, it's not so big a deal. I know what really matters in life. I know what's actually important. And so I think this example of what Prabhupada did, and to complete the story, so he was in New York, still had so much difficulty, but then people saw that he just genuinely wanted to help others. Wasn't coming here to look for fame, power, prestige. Wasn't coming like, let me make a name for myself, like a lot of us tend to do sometimes. Maybe we do it consciously, maybe subconsciously, but that wasn't his mood. His mood was like, I'm so grateful for the knowledge that I've had. Like, I want to share this with people. This could really help the world. He had so much compassion that he went through all these obstacles just to share that with other people. And if that knowledge wasn't shared, if he didn't overcome those obstacles, I know I definitely wouldn't be in this room now. Who knows what I'd be doing? Probably still drinking every weekend, nonsense, right? Spun out all the time, not knowing which end is up, and it's like, and I know a lot of us in the room maybe have a similar, I don't know where I would be if this person didn't take the risk and didn't overcome these obstacles to give me the knowledge that I have today. And I'm like, wow, that's such a powerful example. And now if we could just remind ourselves to do the same thing, to overcome these obstacles for a greater purpose. And, when we start to ask ourselves those deeper questions, we can come to a platform where we have those sincere cries, where we come to the kirtan and we're just crying like a baby reaches out for its mother, and you start to have these really, really beautiful experiences. And then no matter what happens, there's color in your life. Even though you're gonna have the ups and downs, that's just inevitable. You're in the ocean, the waves are gonna come. But if you dive deep in the ocean, if you go deep, you don't feel the waves so much. And that's what we're trying to do, actually. So we're coming here on a weekly basis. I imagine a lot of you guys come. And you're chanting, you're crying your heart out. And then, the next step is to, associate with people that are wanting to do the same thing, that want to discuss those higher topics with you, want to help you connect to the Supreme. It's this long-lost love that we're yearning for, that we don't, quite realize. And have you guys ever cried in kirtan? Or just been why am I so emotional? What's going on? It's because you're seeing like, oh my gosh, my long lost love, like I miss you. You know, like what have I been doing? But a lot of times we don't get to that space unless we're suffering, unless we have those obstacles. And so I say, let's like welcome these obstacles. I know it sounds like kind of radical, like what? I'm gonna welcome obstacles, but yeah. And gosh, like sometimes I have these thoughts like I kind of wish I was struggling right now because I'd be a little more introspective if I were. But then I'm scared because I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to answer that. Like, I don't know if I should be seeking that, but I know inevitably it's going to come. It's just a roller coaster. You can't, that's just what it is. But if I train my mind to shift, so then when it does get hard, I'm not like so freaked out about it, then I can really have a beautiful life. And I think we all can too. We can all encourage each other when we can't see things clearly. Like, why is this happening? And these could be really transformational periods in our life. And I know for me that, gosh, I can think of like the most difficult times in my life and where I've like really, really used that as an opportunity to cry out and like be sincere. It's just been like looking back, I'm like, wow, that was a pivotal moment in my life. Do any of you guys have that experience where it's just like, you're just like going through it and you're like, you know what, it's time to upgrade. I need to change things. Does anyone want to share? I know it's kind of like, you don't have to share your deepest moment, but maybe there's a moment that's going to inspire someone. Like sharing amongst each other is powerful. Who has the courage to share? I'll share. Okay. Oh, there you go.
I'll share. Last year this time, actually, I had some surgeries, and I was in the hospital over 100 days, and I thought my life was over. And I spoke to a friend of mine, and he told me that this was an opportunity for growth. This was the greatest opportunity that I'd ever have. And at the time, I couldn't see it. But like looking back now, like it's led me to this a lot of meditation, a lot of fasting, yoga, prayer, and it actually was like the greatest growth opportunity that I ever had. But sometimes it's challenging in the moment, and that's one of the things he always taught me to do, is to shift my perspective on seeing it as challenges as opposed to being opportunities for growth. Like these are blessings. I may not always see that, but if I can shift my perspective, and that's what it's done. This is like now one of the greatest opportunities and times in my life, but it's because of that transformational time.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and you said it's just like a change in your vocabulary and like the language that you use, right? It's like, it's so powerful. And you said to see it as an opportunity, to see it as a challenge. But then sometimes we get so stuck in like the negative language and victimizing, why me? But then you do that and then you're like, okay, this is a blessing in disguise. And if you start to train yourself that way, even when you come across the obstacle and you don't quite think that, like you're not quite there, but you just like, okay, there's a blessing, it's a blessing in disguise. Like something's gonna come out of this, then you start to kind of route yourself that way. And you kind of know like, there's opening you up to reach out to another person that will help give you the vision that you need to see the blessing in disguise. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share?
Actually,
Yeah.
I remember one time I was in a really bad depression because I put a lot of faith in somebody that I trusted, that I was in love with. But she was very angry a lot of the time, and I just kind of followed along and just kind of listened to what she had to say. And I don't know, one day I made a mistake and she just let me have it, and I don't know, it was like, it sent me into this like spiral of depression I didn't know how to come out of. But I tried to think, I talked to somebody and they reassured me that my pain was a deep one, but that it was one that I could easily come out of if I changed my perspective. And since then, I've just been kind of reanalyzing like how I view relationships in general. And it's been, and I at the time I certainly didn't see it as a point of growth, but since then I've definitely grown a ton because of it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and do you think you would have grown as much without that?
No.
That
Not even
occurrence?
close.
Yeah, right? So now you're like, oh, I'm kind of glad that happened. Even though it sucked, it was so hard, and we don't want it to be hard. It's like we want it to be all good, but we're not willing to put in the work. And it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. You know, but we have each other to lean on during these difficult times. And gosh, I could think of so many examples even in my own life where that's happened. And one that comes to mind is in college, just like trying to do too much. And I remember one time I was driving my friend to Lake Elsinore and it started to rain. And my car just spun out of control from the carpool lane all the way to like the last lane. And I thought I was gonna die. Like my car's spinning and I see all these cars coming towards me on the freeway and my body went into shock and I'm like, I'm gonna die. I'm really like bracing myself. And then my car just landed like not even one scratch. And I was so freaked out. I started to cried, and then I just like didn't really process it. And then I just like started having panic attacks and I was just like too freaked out to drive on the freeway and I was like throwing up. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I had cancer, like Google symptoms, right? And like all this stuff was going on. But now looking back, like it forced me to change my lifestyle because I was just moving too fast, wasn't taking care of myself, and it was like, I'm like glad that happened now because I don't think I wouldn't have made all the changes I made at the moment had that not happened. It just like, for me, it took like me to have health problems for me to realize I needed to change. Needed to like upgrade and change my mindset, change my lifestyle. Yeah, and so it's been powerful. So thank you guys for allowing me to speak tonight, and hopefully you guys leave feeling like, yeah, bring it on, obstacles. Like, you know, obstacle comes knocking your door, look, you're like, hell yeah, bring it on, because I'm gonna upgrade from this. I'm not gonna be the victim, I'm gonna upgrade. Can we all say that together? I'm gonna upgrade. Yes. Thank you guys.